Welcome to Nested Integral Coaching Constellation Podcast. Today's topic is the impact of trauma in our daily lives and how we react to triggers. My name is Desiree. I'm an intern at NI2C. I'm on the podcast team and the outreach team. I'm also a student at Cal State Fullerton and my major is psychology. Does Morgan want to start?
Okay, so my name's Morgan. I am also an intern at NI2C. I am on the fundraising and grant writing team. I am a human services major at Cal State Fullerton with a focus on mental health.
And then Carrie?
So I'm Carrie Kirkpatrick. I'm the co-founder of Freedom Finders, which is an Enneagram consulting business and work as an Enneagram guide to individuals and teams. And I am a supporter, donor, and fan of NI2C.
And then Stacy.
Hi, I'm Stacy Sennell, and I'm a senior at Cal State Fullerton. I will be interning for NI2C next semester. I am a human services major, and I'm currently an intern as a character and conflict co-leader for the character and conflict class at Cal State Fullerton.
Okay, perfect. I want to start by saying I appreciate you guys taking your time to have this conversation. And I'll start this conversation by asking the question, how does trauma impact someone's daily life?
I can think of an experience I had where a trauma memory came back to me just when I was driving my girls to school. I really, it happened quite a long time ago, but maybe 12 years ago. And I remember driving down the road and there was something, I can't tell you at this moment, but like this whole memory came flooding back to me while I was driving down this long road of something that, was 20 years old in my memory. And so it really makes me think about all of these cues that I have no idea really until I build awareness about them, whether it was something I was listening to, whether it was something I saw, whether it was something I was thinking about my own children, and how that can just flood into your life. I was on a Zoom the other day and a personal trainer was talking about how he was at the gym. He's also a coach and works with Dan Siegel, Dr. Dan Siegel, in interpersonal neurobiology field for years. And as a trainer, he's at this gym and he saw a woman completely freeze when she was doing a motion. And the other people who weren't as trauma informed as perhaps he was, he noticed that she was having a response, like that motion she was doing suddenly had her in a state of her experience where they called an ambulance, that, suddenly she had 30 people all around her. And he really felt for her in that moment. Like, since we're all just coming up to speed on how our body is so complex when trauma happens. So those are two things I can think of.
Carrie, I think you made a really great point. Mine is really very similar to that. I was driving home from work one day and I know exactly what it was that triggered me. It was a bunch of police cars flying down the street, and immediately I sat there and I was driving and I said, I'm not safe, I'm not well, what do I do? And so I sat there and I tried to pull out all of my previous trainings, saying, try to calm your breath, try to do what you can, turn your music on so maybe you can, psych yourself back out of, this state. Or, drive in silence. Maybe you can, listen to your brain, you can listen to your thoughts, and maybe you can, get yourself back down to that moment. But it immediately took me back to this trauma that had happened, I think about 5 years before at that point. And it's one of those things that I've said this since experiencing my own trauma with triggers. You don't know that they are a trigger until you've been triggered. So you don't know. And it's very hard to sit there and say, I know this will trigger me, or I know this will be a thing. Like, you might have a possibility, you might have a potential, you might have a thought, maybe the song, maybe the sound, the smell, maybe those things that you can relate to that day. But otherwise, until it's triggered you, you don't know that it's a trigger, and you don't know that it may affect you in your everyday personal life. And I've had very, very random things trigger me since then. And I'm going, that is the weirdest thing to sit there and feel like that of all things is the thing that sent me into my, PTSD fit today. So, but I love that you're talking about everybody being slightly more trauma informed now and being able to recognize people's triggers and this fight or flight or freeze, and how do we support them? How do we move through them, on a daily basis? So I think that was really wonderful the way that you started that.
Mine is a unique, as a co-leader of character and conflict, I co-lead a group of 8 members just coming in to do their self-awareness. And I recently had a session that was rather trauma-filled with members with a lot of trauma. And I had to do my best to leave my triggers outside the door so I could be there to manage what was going on in my group. And I could see the look on my co-leader's face as well, where she didn't know what to do. I'm a second-time leader, so I kind of knew how to like regroup internally, hold it back, and move on. And as soon as they walked out the door, I could feel it just hit me. Like it was like the floodgates opened, and I had to regroup and kind of count on the support system around me, which was my other leaders and my supervising professor, who came in, saw the look on my face, did a meditation. So I reached out, I got my support, I got it back together, and then luckily I was able to process it in therapy the next day. So I find that those triggers, I have to maintain them in order to kind of be able to do what I need to do. But I think, yeah, it's hard when you're trying to help other people.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting, like how we could get triggered at any point during the day, and like for example, you have to keep it together. Like we cannot or we have to like kind of like change how our body is literally physically reacting on the insides. Like we're probably panicking, our heart's racing, we have anxieties or nausea or any of these feelings, and we have to physically put those feelings aside to go on with our daily lives.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to leave the room twice.
Mm-hmm.
Can't do that. So
Yeah.
what do I do? You know,
What did you do?
what did I do? You know, it was the work I've done to be me who I am now, which took a lot of work for a good over 2 years of daily work. I just I thought more about, gosh, these other people that may not have done as much work as I did. I felt that they might need me more than I needed me at that time. And I think it's kind of a mom thing too. You just do it. The mom instinct comes out, and I guess my mama bear came out, and I made sure everybody was okay. And that in turn kind of helped calm the trigger in itself. I find that helping others kind of helps me at the same time. So yeah, and then you hold it together and you wait until they leave, and then you when you feel safe enough, you let it out. And that worked for me.
I think it's sort of speaking to that thing that we all know already, which is that, we hurt in relationship and we heal in relationship. And so probably that role you're playing is part of the healing for everyone in the room, and probably you too,
I think so.
Yeah.
It definitely, I didn't feel as bad. And I think it's just also it's a testimony to wanting to do the work and wanting to be better. That drives me, and I think that keeps me in check. My triggers are there, and they're there for a reason, but I definitely manage a lot better now than in years past. It would literally destroy me. So yeah, that's a testimony to the people around me too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually wanted to get into our social relationships with people and how our trauma could impact our relationships with your parents or significant others, and how that affects our lives as well. And you kind of touched a little bit on it, Stacey, and how helping other people helps you. Does trauma affect your guys' social relationships?
Yeah, so majority of the traumas that I have experienced, I did with my younger sister. And one of the largest events that we experienced together was the Las Vegas mass shooting in 2017. So if I wouldn't have had her there, I think that truly I don't think I would have survived, honestly. I froze and everybody else was, running and I was just going, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, just kind of like just stuck. And so within, the first 6 months after we went back to Vegas, we retraced our steps. We did a lot of things in not necessarily in doing the emotional work, but just the supportive work between each other, like let's go retrace our steps. Let's go find, people that we can go talk to. Let's go find other, survivors. Let's just see what we can do. And now it's been 7 years and here I am in this field, in this human services major, in this availability of space of being able to know that that's part of the reason that I want to help people is you can look at traumas and you can look at the things that you experience and you can let it totally destroy you. You can absolutely just have those moments that you are weak beyond repair. And I don't mean that in a way that you are a weak person, just that it's just so heavy that when you are able to find that resource and you're able to say, it's time for me to get help. Who do I reach out to? How can I reach out to somebody? And then you start to get that help and then you find that strength in helping yourself and growing within yourself and doing the work. And the work is not easy. Like Stacey just said, it is not easy. Daily work is hard. And looking at all of the potentials and all of the moments and all of the triggers that you could have later on for years, 20, 30 years could go by and you could still have those same triggers or those same emotions. But having my sister really made our bond a lot stronger. We, like I said, on other things that we've experienced together just really kind of stuck us together. But it was hard, being with people who also didn't understand what was happening, people who didn't understand triggers and emotions and things like that. I was at concerts where a physical fight was enough to trigger my fight or flight, and I sat there and said, I have to leave. I'm unsafe. This violence is not okay. And then when I talked to my therapist about it later, he said, you have attached this act of physical violence to your traumatic gun violence, which is why you sat there and felt so unsafe and why you needed to go. But it affected certain relationships with people who didn't understand that that's not what I was trying to do. I wasn't trying to ruin our fun concert night. I wasn't trying to do that. It was just like, I don't know what's happening and I don't know why I feel the way that I feel. So, but again, kind of like Stacey said, it brought me to this point of being this student, being this person, and looking at how can I help other people and how can I help them move past these things that unfortunately is something that continues to happen.
Well, it affects, I have two sons, 15 and 18. They experienced a lot of the trauma with me, so I carry a lot of that guilt because I feel my choices kind of affected them. And they're very hypervigilant with their mom. They've seen me have triggers. And they check on me all the time. Mom, are you okay? Mom, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, mom's great. Mom knows how to handle it. So yeah, it does affect them. And I do feel the need to, be the mom and make sure they're okay through this process as well. So, sometimes I have to put myself aside to make sure they come first and then get to me, which is quite the opposite of putting the oxygen mask on first, but sometimes we do what we need to do as moms. But yeah, it affects them. It affects them quite a bit. And my relationship with them has actually been stronger because of it. On the contrary, we often think of trauma being negative, but I think the results and what comes after and how our actions beyond that can actually change into a positive way. My relationship is stronger with them. And our communication is more open. So I have to say in the beginning, yeah, it was not good, but it's definitely with work again is turned into probably a better experience than most would think.
I think for me, I have these hard etched in. I think of it like a record, and I have a needle on a song that just, is like the thing I do. So I'm curious to hear from all of you those responses of, fight, flight, freeze, and then fawn. I would say freeze and fawn is very much the way I dealt with certain things. And so to experience how hardwired those can be sometimes, even though the work I do is called Freedom Finders, because it's like, by being aware of my choices, I can actually choose differently if I want to, finding freedom. But when it's in your whole body system, including like, I got a call from someone with a long standing, from my family relationship, and I answered the phone. They hadn't called me in like 6 years, and my heart was in my throat, like pounding so hard. And there it was. I felt like I was like 7 years old again, and I'm 56. So, and I very much had like this freeze kind of, and I had to tone down my fawn a little bit. And recently I was at a training that an organization called Climb Wyoming does. They work with generational poverty and sort of the toxic stress of generational poverty. And in this training, they talked about another response I'd never heard that makes so much sense to me, which is flock. Where like, if you think you something's happening and you look up around for reference of, am I okay? What's happening here? And it has just really impacted me thinking about that, and in my family system of like, if you look up and there's no reference for something else, or a reference for some other truth, or just wisdom, then that kind of helps me stay in this place of of I don't know, not having a lot of freedom, or just being in a state of, whether it's freeze or fawn, just like, oh my gosh, like I'm looking up and this isn't safe. And I just think of, I'm very passionate about the mass incarceration issue. And if you just think like flock, and you look up and, you're in this situation that's so inhumane, the body is just knows in that wisdom. There's so much wisdom in it, but regulating it, or calming oneself, or not having all of those different reactions is like such daily work. So I'm curious for other people. I don't know, like whether you relate a lot more to the flight or the, not to take your, you're the question asker. So
No, of
I was
course, yeah,
curious.
that's it.
I was just
I freeze, I shut down, I go mute. Like, I'm definitely like any physical or any altercation, I'm a freezer. I will get beat up. Like,
I think I'm kind of a mix of all of the above. I look back at certain events, and in terms of the shooting, I think it was actually more of a flock. So I'm really happy that you brought that to my attention as a knowledge, because I mean, I did look up and I was looking at everybody else going, what's everybody doing? Where are we all going? Where, what is safe? I remember looking at security saying, how do I get out of here? And he said, I don't know. And I said, what do you mean you don't know? You're security. You were hired for this event, for this venue. What do you mean you don't know how for us to get out of here? So, but then, we're going with the flock. We're going with everybody else, leaving. But in that initial moment, it was freeze for me, because I sat there and I went, okay, well, I don't see any danger. I don't hear any danger. I don't, other people are freaking out, but I'm not seeing anything to be worried about. But then there's also that kind of mama bear part of me that is the older sister, as a motherless daughter, that I sit there and I want to be protective of my sister, and I want to do that, and I want to say, all right, well, here's the time to fight. Here's the time that I protect you. Here's the time that I put myself first, and that way you don't get hurt. That way I'm willing to take the brunt of this. So you're safe. So I'm a little bit of both, but it's also really interesting because I think it's so situational, at least for me personally, for what my initial reaction is, because every other time it's really just been situational.
I'm just a big protector. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm just a big protector. I just want to make sure everybody's taken care of. I don't know if that's a people pleaser in me. I think that's evolved quite a bit. But yeah, Mama Bear, that's me.
So does that mean you most relate to the fight response to threats? Yeah.
Pretty much. I used to be a very scared, shy person, and I just found that that doesn't work for me in my evolution anymore. And the parental thing definitely comes into play, and so yeah, I would agree.
Okay. The next question I'll ask is, how can one cope with triggers?
For me, knowledge, wisdom, learning, like naming is so, my colleague told me a quote of, I think she said it's from Mr. Rogers, which if you can leave Mr. Rogers, if all those years ago, where he'd say, what's mentionable is manageable. I guess it was a quote from him. And I think a lot of that has just been true for me. Just name what's happening. Naming the body, what the wisdom coming from the body, and how much that's helped me actually orient myself to what's happening with me, then also really diffuse a situation for everyone else. Like the one I was just describing, like my heart is beating so fast right now. It feels like it's in my brain. Like I'm going to need a moment, whether it's taking breaths or the body, returning to the body, listening to the body.
I Carrie, that response is so fantastic, because I was thinking, really the same thing, is listening to the body, listening to yourself, listening to what you're feeling. But I think there's also a major missing aspect in child development, in elementary, middle, high school, of not acknowledging mental health and the issue of mental health for our next coming generations. Is how do we support them in these moments if they don't realize that they're being triggered, if they don't realize that they're having a moment, if they can't name it because they don't know what it is and they've never experienced it. I've been doing a lot of looking into children and, like I said, kind of like the child development area of trauma and how to help best support them so that later on in their lives, when they become adults, when they're in their 20s, 30s, 50s, they have these tools that they can use later on to sit there and say, okay, let's regulate my breath. Let's figure out where this is coming from. What is this deeper emotion that I'm experiencing? Is it related to a past trauma? Is it related to just a stress that I have right now? And if they can't name it, then they don't know how to manage it either. So that's a thing that I've been kind of worried about and thinking about, for, like I said, for our future generations. But as adults, as people who have done the work, as people who have gone to therapy or have, been a part of, organizations like NI2C, there are options, there are things, there are resources, there are so many things that we can do to help support ourselves. You also just have to know that there are these resources out there for you. And again, I think there's a huge, like massive miscommunication in, at least in the United States, for mental health and for resources to know what you have out there. So, like I said, at least for me, it's really similar to kind of what you were saying, of just feel your breath, listen to your heart, listen to all of your inner feelings, your inner workings, and go from there. You may not be able to fix it right away. You may not be able to just, snap yourself right out of it. But if you sit there and you think about it long enough and hard enough, you might be able to just calm yourself or meditate enough down to a manageable time or aspect at that point.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. Like, I grew up in a household where mental health didn't exist. So all of these feelings that I was feeling, like, I didn't know what Like, I think it's so important to put a label or identify triggers as well. And I didn't start working through them until I went to college and I started being educated on psychology and the mind and why we feel the way we feel or react certain ways. So I think it's very important for, yeah, the future generation that mental health is known. Teaching children words like regulating your emotions or breathing, exercising, or listening to how you feel is really important.
I think it's about honoring your feelings as well and taking the shame behind away from these things. I've learned to just really understand that my body's trying to tell me something and my body's trying to tell me I need to get this out, and then it's okay. And I'm going to honor that feeling for a moment, and I'm going to let myself cry if I need to, and breathe. And, just by doing that for myself, I find that the triggers don't last as long, because if I fight it, it's suppression, it's toxic. My body starts to feel that, and releasing it for me personally is the best thing that I can do to honor that.
I think that's also very special. The honoring those emotions. I know we kind of talk about that a little bit in character and conflict of just honoring them as they come up and feeling them as they come and not suppressing them. And I've kind of said it in during the repair program that something that's kind of also worked for me in a moment of like, I cannot do this right now. Either I am at work, I am somewhere that I really truly, so kind of Stacey, like what you were saying before earlier, that you were leading a group and you couldn't do it. Something that I've learned over the years is if I can't do it in this moment, I need to name that emotion, whether it is sadness or grief or anger, anxiety, whatever it is. I need to hold it and I need to put it in my pocket. And I'm not going to ignore it. I'm not going to suppress it. I just, for the meantime, when I still have to be the adult, I have to be the co-leader of this group. I have to be the mom. It's going to sit in that pocket until I can be alone. And then at that point, I'm going to pull it out and I'm going to honor it, because if I don't honor it, then I've suppressed it and I've ignored it. And then it just sits there and manifests and just because, like you said, becomes this super toxic internal, feeling of going, okay, well, I've ignored that for long enough, so here it comes out. Here's this massive volcano of emotion. So, but I think it's really important to still take the time to honor them, like you said, even if it can't necessarily be in that exact open moment, because we maybe have other things that we need to do in that timeline.
Yeah, that healthy release is, so I've had experiences, and maybe you have too, of like, it can end up as like my back has gone out. What's going on in my, like, why is my back gone out? Or people I know who speak of other things that just come out of, like, suddenly have even things like eczema or any kind of physical ailment. I really do believe what science is showing us now, that, that whole body keeps a score. And if we're not healthy releasing it, an ulcer or whatever it might be, our body tells us, like, here's some work you need to do. And I was listening to Trauma Rewired, which is another podcast. I don't know if any of you have ever, but they had such a great recap of like how we all, and myself included, mental health. It's such a great word. And yet it's like everything health. It's like our interoception, it's the vagus nerve, it's our emotions, like Stacey was pointing out. I mean, like before I got on this call, and I was just sort of bringing to mind all the things that are involved in me and you as like an organism walking around on the planet. Like, it's amazing we're as okay as we are sometimes, because we're so complex, and we're learning about that more and more now. And it does really seem like a gift. And I'm so glad to hear, Morgan, your focus, on that with children, because that's hope right there.
What is something you guys do to calm yourself down when you feel overwhelmed?
Music.
Me too. I had to go in my car and drive for like an hour and listen to music and calm myself down.
I go outside. I let the sun hit my face and I breathe the fresh air, and that has been a big tool in my tool belt of how to kind of alleviate that. That and music.
Music is also a huge thing for me. So concerts, car. I could care less if I'm singing and dancing in my car and I'm on the freeway. Anybody who is next to me, enjoy it. Get your free show, have a good time because I'm gonna continue singing and dancing in my car for the rest of my life. So like I said, if you see me, enjoy it, have a good time, please. But something when I like for me, like really bad anniversary days. What I really like to do is I like to go to the beach really early. Living in Southern California, I am blessed to be able to have a quick drive down to the beach. But I like to go really early, like 6 o'clock, have a coffee. I like to sit down and even if it's cold, I want to put my toes in the water for a little bit as a water sign. Water is very healing for me, so I enjoy doing that, and I do it with the intention of the water is rushing over me. It is taking away the emotions that I'm feeling, the stress, the anxiety, whatever it may be, and I will just let it, wash off. Don't get me wrong, that doesn't always work, but sometimes it does do a little bit of the healing. But also guided meditations. For me, something short, something under 10 minutes, but it has to be guided. Otherwise, my brain will just ping pong everywhere, pinball, anything you possibly can. It will just, go crazy. But like a 5-minute guided meditation for whatever it is that I'm feeling, whatever emotion it is, I will, go to my Calm app or YouTube or whatever it may be, and I will find something that's fitting for that kind of moment, that feeling, and I'll try to work on it and I'll try to honor that feeling, but usually it is very much music. If I need like a instant fix, it is music and probably my dog.
Yeah, music for me too. And sometimes it's not even just like jamming out. It's literally having like a song just to cry to. When I'm overwhelmed, I just need to let it out some way. So I have a cry song that every single time I need to cry and I know I have those feelings, I'll just put it on and then I just bawl my eyes out in the car or anywhere, honestly. That's
Yeah, I have a playlist for that. So and I won't tell you what it's named because it is not a funny name. But I do have a playlist that I have put together and I have shared with people who have experienced similar traumas and I have told them, "Hey, if you like the playlist, listen to it. If you don't, you're not gonna hurt my feelings if you want to take certain songs off of it." And also it's kind of one of those, take what you relate to and leave what you don't. I didn't make this playlist for you. I made this playlist for me. So, but if it's gonna help you release some of your emotions, then yes. Also, there's like a list of movies that I can put on if I also need to cry it out. So I'm so with you on that, Desiree. That is, I have a whole playlist and it's probably almost 2 hours long.
We've also
I
said like so many times already, but like the breath, always the breath. I mean, those 3 deep breaths so work for me. It's incredible.
The beach too. Me and my friends have a joke like, we don't need to touch grass, we need to touch water. We need to go to the beach, whatever time it is, just sit in the grass, feel the wind, and I feel like all those distractions help me when I'm feeling overwhelmed. And they say water heals. So
Yeah, or putting your feet in, I mean, like you said, yeah, taking your shoes off and like maybe just laying on the ground fully on your back, just feeling like the support of your body, the planet, you know, things that kind of ground you like that.
mhm. Yeah, even the simple things like the coldness of the water, the sand on your feet, like those like touching things really helps me too, because it gets my mind off of um just my brain and my thoughts.
Is it any part too? Because for me, sometimes with nature, it's like feeling small. That like beautiful feeling of feeling small, if you know what I mean. Like, or rather that there's something so much bigger that's so beautiful and expansive and just kind of helps me relax, to feel I am nature. I am part of what's happening. I am like the stream or the rock, helps me sort of accept the moment.
Yeah, and even seeing people like when I'm out at the beach or outside and I'm seeing people like interact with each other and they're like have a smile on the face or they're happy, like seeing other people happy makes me feel better on the inside too. How about self-care?
I need more of it, but what I do, meditation, exercise, water, like if I can, if it's warm enough, I go in the pool. I find that immersion and completely under the water seems to just kind of regulate me. But yeah, and just sometimes being with my kids, it's and their joy is everything.
Dancing, I love. I just there's even a song called, Dance Yourself Clean. That's what it feels like to me sometimes, which, is just moving my body in that way, connected to music. And just for me, that's really, but it's when you asked it, I made kind of a funny expression because there's all these things a lot of things I have in my life that I know are such good self-care. And so the smirk or smile was like, oh, how I have to get that lesson over and over again of not doing the things that I know are so restorative to me. So it's so easy. Even just the other day, I was like, what would it be like if I started first 15 minutes of every day just like dancing?
Do you like go to classes or do you like
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So there's that great thing too of like being with other people and, having that school of fish feeling, you know. But as we were talking before we got on this call, several of you maybe being in parenting, I've got an empty house now, so I could play that music as loudly as I wanted.
what about Morgan?
Yeah, for me, self-care has been a lot of things. It used to be getting my nails done. It used to be me doing my own nails. Sometimes now it's listening to music, putting on that meditation. Now it's more of putting on that listening to favorite song, lighting a candle, just sitting there and just kind of feeling all of the calmness of the world. We do like to go up to our cabin in Running Springs, and one of my favorite things about being up there is being so immersed in nature and having that really small feeling, but going outside and just having my morning coffee, just sitting there and hearing all of the sounds of nature. That's not the sounds of, the cars going by or, horns honking and, everything else. There's just this beautiful nature silence, the leaves rustling, whatever it may be. But being in nature is so restorative for me when I really need it. But again, that's not always an immediate thing. It takes an hour and 20 minutes to get up the mountain. It takes 20 minutes to drive to the beach, So for that kind of initial immediate, it's that meditation, it's that lighting that candle. It's, just drinking your favorite coffee, whatever it may be, that just kind of makes me feel warm and cozy. So I think it's more of a warm and cozy that I really am looking for when I'm trying to, restore myself.
I'm curious, I guess, Stacy and Morgan, about to be a mom. How does everything you've learned in your own work, how do you feel that's impacting how you'll raise your kids and be with them?
That's a really amazing question. And I'm actually, my relationship with my 18-year-old really got amazingly better. It started about 2 years ago when I left my husband. And then I started doing the work on myself and really understanding my self-awareness better. And in turn, what I was learning through my schooling was really a great way to bond with my son because he was so open-minded to watching me go through a process that I knew I was doing something okay. In his senior year, he called me on his break and said, Mom, someone made me really upset during my class and I'm really angry. I'm like, so you need to talk, you need to like, kind of process this through with your mom. He's like, yeah. I said, okay, how long do we have? He says, I have 10 minutes till my next class. Okay, let's do this. And he was so self-aware already at 17 that I knew that really my journey was not just my journey. I was kind of taking him along with me, and he was so open-minded and so proud, and it makes me feel good knowing as a parent that he's going to be okay and we'll have the tools to handle what life throws at him, because it's not kind out there and I'm not always going to be around. And I just knowing that was such a bright spot and validation in my journey, and I just knew that as long as he keeps going, he's going to be okay. Now the 15-year-old, that's another story. He's 15, but yeah, I saw the way but it just kind of gives me a lot of validation in what I'm doing, and that I'm making a turnaround. So yeah, it gives me faith. So I'm happy.
I think that's really beautiful, because I think in terms for both of us of going through our own traumas and also being willing to do the work and to move through it is so special. And I have more self-awareness for certain aspects of my life than I would care to admit. And I have talked about it in group, and it's special because there are these moments that I'm sitting here and I'm feeling my emotions, and I look down at my stomach and I speak to my unborn son and I say, these emotions are not for you. And you don't deserve to have these emotions. These are mine and they should be mine alone. But I do know that you being inside of me right now, you're feeling them. And then I have this almost guilt of being like, if you're sad, then he's sad. He can hear you and he can feel you. And I have this like, don't be sad, but I'm also going, you can't fake it till you make it through an entire pregnancy. There are going to be hormones and emotions and feelings that you have, but I do try to be very self-aware when I am having an emotional day or an emotional feeling, that I do want to look down at him and I do want to explain to him it's not about him. That emotion for that moment was not for him. It was not about him, and that they were mine and mine alone. But then I look at raising him for the rest of his life, and I look at how do I support him in a way that I could have used it in, my early teen years or my late teens or whatever it was. How do I support you in a way that is also not, I'm your mom, talk to me, tell me how you're feeling? Because my least favorite question every day was, how was your day at school? What'd you do today? How do you feel? It's, do you really want to go home and tell your parents exactly every little ounce of how your day was? But giving them an open space to come talk to you and come say, hey, I had a bad day. Hey, maybe I want to talk about it right now, maybe I don't, but giving them just this opportunity to know that you are there. And that's also, breaking the cycle. My parents, don't get me wrong, were very supportive, and my mom had her own mental health issues, and it took my dad a very long time to be aware of when I was experiencing my first mental health issue. And when he finally looked at me, he said, so what do we do? And I said, I don't know. What do we do? You're the parent here. Like, what do you mean? What are you asking me for? And so that's when he said, I think it's time you call Kaiser. I think it's time you figure out what's going on. And so I did. And there was that first moment of support, but I was 21 at that point. So, but my dad's family was not mental health oriented. They did not talk a lot about mental health. My grandparents didn't exist. Trauma triggers, nothing like that existed for them. So then my sister and I experienced these massive things, and I'm going, yeah, I need to be able to do better. I need to be able to be a better parent. I need to give them a better space and a more open community that allows them to know that my son can just come to me whenever it is that he's feeling like I need to go tell my mom. So Stacey, that's so beautiful that he wanted to call you and figure that out and have that moment with you to sit there and to say, I need to figure it out. I need to figure out my mom. Like, I need my mom right now. It's 10 minutes. And to just go from there. And that's what I'm really hoping for, is to create that connection and that space that allows him to do that without that pressure of saying, I'm your mom, I need you to come to me when something's wrong, you know, because there's that fine line of being overbearing, but also like, I'm your mom, you should come to me when things are wrong. Like, you should want to come to your parents, but also that, hey, you know, I'm here to listen to you. I'm here to hear whatever you have to say, and I just want to be support for you.
Well, I can tell you just by the way you're talking to your son now, you're definitely setting the foundation for yourself. And that's going to go a long way if you're starting it like he's in utero right now. I mean, that's amazing. And I wish I had all these tools. My mother did the best she could. But somebody told me the other day, one of my peers said, I wish I had a mom like you. And I looked at them and I'm like, you don't know how much that means to me, because I wish I had a mom like me. And that really said a lot to me. And it means a lot to me because, you know, we're raising kids, we're putting other humans out into the world, and all you want them to do is live the best life they can be. And that includes, we have our traumas, and that includes how we manage them and being aware of how that affects them as well. So I'd say you're definitely in a good place.
Thank you. That support is something that, you know, I look for regularly. As I shared briefly, it's motherless daughter. I lost my mom at 21, and it's a moment of, how do I not be my mother, but how do I also be my mother? You know, how, because there's so many aspects of being a parent that she was so able and ready and willing to be there for. But, you know, as we also talk about triggers, I'm in this beautiful stage of my life of moving through, you know, engagement and marriage and now, you know, family planning, that there's these moments where I'm like, God, if she would just answer her phone and if she could just answer this question, you know, but it's also like, how do I not be my mom? So how do I not be that person who wasn't able to be there and who wasn't able to work through her own mental health issues, who fought it for a really long time? And don't get me wrong, she did her best. She tried as much as she could. So how do I avoid that? How do I not be her? But then how do I also be her? How do I be that person when she was that good mom, that good person, that great support and all of those things? And I think that having the tools and the resources and the therapies and the connections that we have now is something that gives me that slight advantage that I know my parents, my mom didn't have.
Yeah, 100% agree. I'm where I am because of the help I've had and continue to have, and the resources I have are just like a gold mine, and I am hoarding it all I can until I graduate.
1,000%. That I totally agree with. I will hoard it. I will take it. I will take it for every little teeny tiny penny ounce that it's worth. I will do it.
Yeah, definitely. We are blessed beyond measure to be surrounded by such amazing people that are passionate about what they do, and how most of us do have traumas, and how we're able to move past it so that we can get out there and show others the rich life we can have if we do the work. So yeah, it's amazing.
Talk about the best trickle down possible, right? People talk about trickle down economics, but how amazing to offer this to your yet to be born son. You know, yeah, a lot to forgive. You know, when I look back on how I was when I was younger with my daughter, who, all of my things that were kind of leaking onto her, that then once I did my own work of like, hey, I realized I have things going on inside of me that are getting onto you. And so you're already saying that. You're already creating that separation that's going to be so healthy. So it's really beautiful, Morgan.
Thank you.
I was talking about this neuroscientist who came and spoke to this group where I learned this flock thing, which was like really a game changer for me personally, of a whole new way to look at, and like you said, Morgan, of like, when you're looking out in the group, like, is anybody else like seeing this, and how disorienting. You get disoriented from yourself and disoriented from what's maybe right in the moment. That was a huge thing. And the other thing that really struck me that she was talking about, this sort of like not trauma per se, but maybe the trauma of toxic stress, the trauma of poverty and over a period of time, and how in that situation, like your brain, different parts of your brain get more blood flow, so that like the amygdala, which is your fight, your what they call the lizard brain, is getting more blood flow than the frontal cortex, which is the decision making. And I had never heard that before. And it just really, it makes me so curious about, I know we talk about that like with a forming brain, so a child's brain. But I'm so curious about how that is for adults. Like what if you are incarcerated for 27 years and there's just understandably so much more blood flow going to that part of your brain that has to deal with threat, that keeps you safe from threat. So I don't know, maybe there are some research studies out there, but it just really got me thinking about wow, like even trauma or stress, like how it could change the brain to, thank heavens, neuroplasticity exists, and that is real and alive, and probably all of us have experienced that, of changing ourselves. But it's quite a lot that, the whole system is up against, I guess is what I'm saying.
It's really interesting that you say that, because I'm sure research studies have also been done about what I'm about to share, but I don't want to do research. I am not a research person. This is why I go to a Cal State and not a UC. I don't want to do the research, but this idea of how trauma affects children long term, especially in regards to mass shootings, is something that I have really been trying to tackle and deal with. Is what are their long-term effects? Like, yes, they have the neuroplasticity. Yes, their brains can still do it, and children are resilient. But what are we like? Are we looking at these long-term side effects of what can happen to them when they are experiencing such a massive collective trauma at such a young age? That how do they continue to move through their lives? As we talked about triggers, I was 23 when the shooting happened. I'm 30 now. It's been 7 years. And at 30, I'm still sitting there having triggers and still having PTSD moments and going, oh my God, how do I continue to move through this? And then I look at children and I say, how do you move through this? How do you continue to show up to school? And how do you continue to move forward and do all of those things, knowing that you experienced such a heavy, massive trauma? So it's just really interesting the way that you said that, because it just makes my brain just tickle and think so much more about what these long-term side effects can possibly be for these children who are experiencing this on a way too often of a basis. I can't even give the percentage, because if I think too hard about it, I might spiral a little bit, but they're experiencing it so often that like I said, how do you even support them? So that's part of why earlier when I was saying, I want to be able to give them resources at a younger age, even if they're not experiencing that mass trauma at that young age. Maybe they might still experience some other sort of trauma that then triggers the rest of their life, and it trickles down. So if we have this trickle down theory of mental health and resources that maybe when they do get to 30 and they are having some sort of, reaction to a past trauma, they can sit there and say, I have resources, I have tools, I have things that I can use, instead of feeling like, what do I do? Who do I go to? It's that kind of really lost, stuck feeling that I want to find a way to get children out of that really super stuck, like how do you move forward kind of feeling for them. I think there's a really great level of self-awareness of knowing, maybe I wasn't triggered today, but these people around me possibly were. And how do I continue to live my life knowing that there are people who are experiencing other mass traumas, and as a country, as a nation, as everything, we are just full of collective trauma. And it's interesting to be so self-aware of how do we help other people and how do we do it. But I think that's who we are, and that's who we are meant to be when we come together within nonprofit organizations, human services, whatever it may be, psychology. That's, as horrible as this sounds, we have to have those kinds of traumas because we have to have people who also want to be able to help. So there's this yin and yang of this really negative trauma, and then this really light, white, bright of wanting to help other people. And they have to be married. They have to go together, because if there's all darkness, no light, and all light, no darkness, the world just, falls apart. So we have to experience these horrible things to also then want to be these better people and want to be somebody who can help, really help, help others. But it's so interesting to be so self-aware and have those same thoughts of going, I'm just gonna go pick up my coffee, and I see this person every day and I know that they're having a hard time and I want to help them, or how can I help them? But I'm still gonna go get my coffee, and I'm still gonna drink it, and I'm still gonna enjoy it, and just continue moving through our day.
Do any of you have any personal or friend stories of, maybe trauma being in the body and then like through doing their work healing that illness or problem?
I think I'm a walking example of that. I just through my work with my groups, just through my work with my peers, just through my work with my professors, has given me such a, yeah, I'm just doing it and living it and breathing it and grateful for it. I actually look back at everything I've been through, and a lot of people wish it would go away and wish it never happened. And I am able to look back and say, if it hadn't happened, I wouldn't be sitting here today. And I wouldn't be able to, maybe have an impact on one person, or maybe be able to just tell my story and say, look at me. I mean, I got through it. It's okay. So it's so weird to be able to reframe it and say, I'm actually kind of glad that I was able to do it. Or not glad, but glad that I was able to understand that getting out would change my life. And maybe I didn't understand it at the time, but I'm also a firm believer that everything happens for a reason and reveals purpose. Yeah.
So how's your like physical health now versus when you were in the midst of like your hardest?
My hardest, when I left my husband, I was 108 pounds. Very sick, not well at all. While I glad I'm not 108 pounds, I'm much, much healthier now, in a way where I'm like, where's the happy medium? But I'm still a work in progress, but my health is much better. When you're living in a daily cycle of abuse, I could look at pictures right before I left versus now, and you see a different person. The sadness is gone. I can feel joy now. So the health is much better. Obviously, other things happen, and that's aging. But that's normal, which I'd much rather be going through rather than the physical side effects of trauma and abuse.
Mhm. From this organization that I was mentioning to you earlier, this one woman who was featured in actually the annual report was literally scheduled for heart surgery because they said her heart was, failing, and she went through this whole program that included a lot of support and all the counseling and group and connection and work skills and all these things. And once she was employed and she got several raises and promotions and started on this track, and she healed her heart. Like, she literally did not need heart surgery again, to have the heart surgery. So it's one of the most poignant stories, and she works at a hospital. She got the job at the and they couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe it, but she was out of poverty. She, her whole sense of herself was back and restored, and her wholeness. And I just think it's amazing that you all are involved with what you're doing at Nested Integral Coaching, because it's what makes a difference.
It's
So,
the power of healing. It's the
yeah.
power of healing. It's a tough process. It's nothing sometimes, and I think a lot of things worth having are going to be the hardest things to get,
Mhm.
but the work is worth it. And the pride and the self-awareness that comes along that you gain with it is priceless.
Well, and that testimony of your son calling you, I mean, there's a lot of parents that would give their right arm for their kid to feel that comfortable and see their parent as a resource. So, speaks volumes. Yeah, Stacy.
Means a lot. He means a lot to me. And I will rest easy knowing he's got his tools and is using them.
Mhm.
What did you guys take from the discussion? Any feelings, emotions? Morgan.
I'm feeling a sense of togetherness, but I'm also feeling this sense of hope. That's what Stacey was just saying is so beautiful, of knowing that the work is hard, but it's worth it, and being able to be someone who says that it does get better or it can get better, and to be able to truly mean it and to really say it and own it is such a magical thing. And I don't really like to use the term magical because, it's, magic, but it's not magic. It's a lot of hard work and it's a lot of effort, but it can really just feel like that sense of enchantment of saying, I did it and I'm still doing it, still in, therapies and group therapies and all of these things. And I'm still wanting to put in the work. The work is never done. You can take a break, you can, be good for a little while, but the work is never ever done. And the fact that are these levels of support from so many different places now, that's where I also want to pull out this magical, because there's so much more in these support systems that are being built for our next generations are so special. So I'm really feeling this sense of togetherness and this sense of hope, and I feel really honestly great right now. Thank you so much for having this, for having us. I'm full of gratitude right now. Truly, gratitude is, I think, my biggest feeling right now.
My mic's off, sorry.
Yeah.
And Carrie?
Yeah, I think Morgan's word resonates with me too, the hope, just the compounding effect of more people doing this work and impacting people's lives, and having the lived testimony of that transformation and light to others is just really amazing, and really is what makes it happen. This is going to be a really strange analogy, but like I heard once that there were no, like, just you have to see what you can be in some way, sometimes if you can't see it in yourself, it's helpful to see it in someone else. But like how, like on the pro golf tour, there were no Korean golfers ever. And then the one time the woman who got out there and was this Korean, she's the first Korean pro golfer. And then the next year there were like 360 that applied to be a part of that. And so it's a silly analogy to just I think the term that either Morgan or Stacy used, like these beacons of light, like that's what you're doing by being that. And then it just can be an explosive multiplier in ways you don't even know. So whoever you're touching and the work you're doing, that person, maybe it's their grandmother or their mother or their child that gets impacted by what you're doing. So I think that's sort of the compounding effect of people who are using their story to heal and teach others, just is very inspiring.
And Stacy.
Well, I feel like, Morgan says, I feel a lot of gratitude, and just in such a world of turmoil and darkness, that there's some hope out there, and that there are people that are taking not the greatest things that have happened to them, but utilizing it as their superpower to help others is it's such an amazing thing. And just absolutely grateful for being able to be here and to be amongst the company of you all, and feel the empowerment that comes from these discussions is just amazing, and I'm thankful.
Well, thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate you guys being here and taking your time to discuss this.